So today we're here to talk about unlocking your team's potential. One of the biggest ways to unlock your team's potential is to make sure that you're balancing and growing your team through strength-based leadership. Now, there's a couple of important parts to strength-based leadership, and I'm sure that you already know at least one of them. One way to make sure that you're balancing and growing your team through strength-based leadership is to make sure that you understand your strengths. And another way is to make sure that you understand your team's strengths. And we're going to talk about both of those a little bit today. So thank you all for joining, and we're going to jump into it. You should be seeing the front of the deck, a bunch of hands in place, getting ready to give a good cheer. Which, by the way, very interesting. I just saw this whole little hoorah thing done yesterday. I watched my daughters, who traditionally are the leaders of their softball team. Well, they are the leaders of their softball team. One is the captain, and the other kind of tells the captain what to do. I'm kidding. I'm not. But they just lost abysmally yesterday, which is really, really not common for our team. We tend to win, and we tend to do pretty well. And yesterday, a couple of injuries happened in the early part of the game. And I think it psyched everybody out. And what I thought was awesome and great is at the end, they still came together, put their hands together, did a bunch of cheering, and got themselves back hyped up and back into a good personality after talking about the loss. And I thought, it just made me think about this as we were looking at the slide this morning. That's one of the things that we're going to talk about today, because when you have a team and put the team together in the right way, with the right cheerleaders, the right hype, then the right core strength, you're going to find that the team ends up being more successful, more productive over time. So let's just jump into it. For those that haven't met me before, I am Jeff Kuhn. I'm the franchise partner here for Cyberbacker Maryland. We cover Maryland, DC, and Delaware as our territory. So if you know anybody in Maryland, DC, or Delaware that's looking for a virtual assistant, that's us. We're here to help you out. Shara is on the call with me. Shara, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, for sure. Hey everyone, I'm Shara. I'm the growth backer assigned here at Cyberbacker Maryland. So what I do is to help you evaluate your business needs, and I can help you figure out what's the best role of a virtual support that we can definitely help you. And of course, the goal is to make sure that you can lessen your workload so you can focus more on your clients or on your one thing. That's it. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Shara. And Irene, who is shown on the slide here, if y'all haven't had a chance to meet Irene, she's busy actually conducting interviews right now. She has one going a little bit long. We'll talk a little bit about interviewing today too, in terms of strength-based leadership. And Irene helps people to set up the resumes and go through and find the people that can balance out your team, sets up the original interviews and joins those interviews to make sure that you are finding who you're looking for. So that's what she's doing right now. She might join us in a little bit. So last month, we went through standing out from the noise. It was a social media class, but with a little bit of a twist. If you want to look to increase your impact or your legacy through social media and how it is that you present yourselves on social media, just reach out to Shar for the link, and I am sure she can get you that video, and you can join us a little bit, what's the word? Asymmetrical? No, asynchronous. Join us asynchronously in that mastermind. Awesome. So what I'd really love to know, though, is what made being here important for you today? So if you're driving, don't pick up a pen and write this down. If you're not, take a pen and write it down. You can share it in the chat if you want to. Really, this is for you. I want you to understand what it is that brought you here today. You came, you took some time out of your schedule in order to learn something, get better at something. What did you come here to learn? If you want to share it with me so I can make sure we hit on it, that's also fine. And then again, throw it in the chat or come off of mute and tell me. And otherwise, write down what you came here for. So that way, if at the very least, at the end, if we haven't touched on it, we've got some time for Q&A and we will move forward from there. So again, thank you all for coming. And here we go. So what are strengths? I know, a little bit of a basic question, and it's what we're going to use to get started. So if you had a look at strengths in general, what are strengths? When I think of strengths, the first thought that comes to mind is honestly, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger in his Mr. Universe pose, right? I think of somebody super charismatic standing up and leading a team. I think of people running a triathlon or an Ironman. For me, physical signs often are the first sign that jumps out in my head when I first think of strengths. And then as I start to think through strengths, I start to realize that it's not just those first initial impressions, but it's also that support staff, right? How often have you seen the quote, behind every great person is their great spouse, right? And then obviously business partners, so many famous business partners out there where you've got the person in the forefront, but they let you know that they never would have been successful without the other people that were backing them up and running around and doing the work for them, right? And so as we're looking at strengths, what about you? What is something that stands out to you as something that is a strength, either for yourself or your team? What's a strength for you? Again, throw it in the chat, come up, mute, and share. One other element that I come across is what are weaknesses? I have a famous quote that an old boss of mine used to say, and it was, Jeff, I think your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. And that actually shows up. I'm going to show you a little bit of a slide on that a little bit later. And that is that I learned over the years, I was the quiet guy that liked to hide in the corner. And I realized over time that quiet guy that liked to hide in the corner, despite natural abilities of leadership, I didn't necessarily like to put myself on a pedestal. And because I wasn't putting myself on the pedestal in front of people and leading from the front, I often was left behind early in my career. I wasn't the one that was picked first for the promotion because I was always lifting others up so much. And so over time, I learned to be a bit more vocal, which turned into social ability, right? Because I forced myself to talk, and now I'm a speaker by trade. And in that process, though, sometimes I talk, right? So sometimes your greatest strength can also be your greatest weakness. And I'm not looking at that specifically here. I'm looking at something that you're not strong at, something it is that holds you back. And that when you spend time doing it, it really ends up putting you under the gun, behind the ball, so to speak. Sometimes for me, that's as a business coach, I hate to say it, but sometimes for me, that's even my lead generation. Again, I'm the guy that likes to hide in the corner. So I have to force myself to still sometimes get out there and talk to people and make sure to introduce myself to new people. I'd much rather go to the people that I know in the crowd instead of walking up to somebody brand new. So building relationships I'm great at, and talking to somebody new, not so great at. So what are your weaknesses? Again, write these down. What is something that inside of your business is not something that you're very strong at? So you should have written down some strengths. You should have written down some weaknesses. Here's a question for you. When you are working to improve performance of your business or performance of your team, what is it that you should be focusing on? Looking at that list, what do you think it is that you should be focusing on? All right, here's the trick question, the trick answer. Delegation is the thing that you should be focusing on. I know, well, Jeff, we're talking about strengths and weaknesses here for this mastermind. That's 100% true. We're here to talk about strengths and weaknesses. And if we aren't finding a way to delegate off of our list and off of our plate, then we're not focusing on strengths and weaknesses. In fact, we want to delegate determined by other people's strengths. We want to bring people into our lives that help to take elements off of our plate that they're strong at and we are weak at. So it's a great little quote. Might be a little bit biased. You'll find out why that's a joke in just a moment. But you don't hire a weak performer to fill a need on your team. Who do you hire? Why would you assign a high performance team member to complete a task that they are weak in? I've seen this mismanaged for decades inside a lot of our businesses. We take somebody that's doing really, really strong in their position, they succeed, they exceed, they get ahead of their peers, and then because somebody else is falling down on the job, we take that high performer and put them on something that might not even be their strength. And now we've got a high performer focused on their weakness instead of building up their strength and running with what it is that they're already running with. The reason that's a little bit of a joke is that's my quote. I've said that in a couple different hiring practices and seminars that I've taught. So what we really want to make sure that you're doing is that if your team has a weakness, you're hiring for that missing piece. You are plugging in the missing piece with somebody else that has that weakness as their strength. Forbes, 9 simple ways to improve your team effectiveness. The first way that they say is to ensure alignment. Make sure that we're all aligned on the same goal. We all have a similar vision and we're all going the same direction. Once we're ensured on alignment, what we want to do is clarify the roles and responsibilities. Harvard Business Review comes in with their same story, how to improve team performance. Their very first reason, the very first way is to delegate. So between Forbes, between Harvard Business Review, and we can take some high credibility here in knowing that delegating out weaknesses is the way to improve our performance on our team. When delegating, you don't want to play to your employees' strengths, or you want to play to your employees' strengths, my bad, and ensure that they have the knowledge that they need and the resources that they need in order to complete their tasks. All right. Well, this is one of those interesting things, and we're going to share a form at the very end of this call that really gets into and talks about this. Because if you hire somebody to fill their strength, but we don't give them the resources to succeed, what do you think the odds are that they're going to win? Sometimes it depends on how resourceful that person is, right? Sometimes it's going to depend on whether or not you hired somebody who has a great accountability mentality versus a victim mentality. And sometimes, despite all odds, if they don't have any resources, they're gonna struggle. So having a conversation with your team members every single week in order to identify what their goal was, how they did according to their goal, what obstacles they ran into, and how it is that we can help them focus on their strengths and succeed is crucial to making sure that they have a chance to succeed when we've hired people and delegated based on their strengths. So again, grab that pen. What I really need you to do now is I want you to take a pen and list out the top 10 things that you do for your job each week. So the things that repetitively you are out there doing every single week. These are things that just you are doing. So for me, I mentioned lead generation. I start my morning with lead generation every single day. The very first half hour to an hour, depending on which business it is that I'm lead generating for. If I'm generating for my speaking business, if I'm generating for coaching, if I'm lead generating inside of Cyberbacker here, the very first thing I do every single day is lead generate. And so lead gen is one of the top of my to-do list. Inside Cyberbacker, I've got Shar and Irene to take a lot off of my plate, right? So after some of the lead generation and passing that on to Shara, I don't have to worry about that quite so much anymore. But inside of my coaching business, which is the next place I'm going to be hiring a Cyberbacker, I have to do a lot of the CRM entry, a lot of the spreadsheet updates. So that's definitely something that I have to do as part of my career. I don't have a business development person locally other than me. So right now, if I want to go out to networking events, I'm out at networking events every single week in order to shake hands. I just told you all, I like to hide in the corner. So once you've made that list, I want you to go back to the list and take a look at the items that you have on the list that you love to do. I love to stand in front of people and talk. Might not be social, but I do love to see the ahas, right? Again, for sociability. I also have a real passion to helping others find their way to success. That's why it's coaching, that's why it's speaking, and that's why it's providing support to businesses in order to succeed. And so for me, I love this work. I love to stand up in front of people and talk. I love to figure out what their needs are. I love to figure out what we can do to help. I would put a big smiley face surrounding those conversations, those business assessments, those lunches, right? Those one-on-one conversations, those group conversations where we have a chance to help people uncover their ahas. I really enjoy that. And then I would go put X's on the things that I just hate. Those are probably weaknesses for me. If there's something that I have to do, but I hate to do, they're soul-sucking, then why would I spend my time or energy doing them, right? I want to get those off of my plate, and I want to find somebody else that is on my team that it is a strength for, that we can have take those roles and responsibilities. For instance, Shar and I did this recently. Shar was in charge of our weekly newsletter. And that was kind of a struggle for Shara. She never knew what to put in. Again, one-on-one relationships, having one-on-one conversations is fine. Figuring out what to write about in our newsletter was not something she was strong in. But as I just told you, for me, that's something I love to do. I love to communicate. I love to write. And so in that sense, we shifted some responsibility on who was creating the content inside of the newsletter. So now it comes from me instead of from Shara, because she sat there for hours trying to figure it out, and I can spit out 500 words in probably 5 minutes. So we shifted that in order to have the different people on our team looking at those strengths. That starts with you identifying the tasks that you're working on, what you love to do, what you hate to do, and then realigning it to see how that fits. So how you might see some of your strengths and some of your weaknesses. How do you figure out their strengths and weaknesses? Well, there are a few different resources that are out there. And so whether they're working for us or whether they're interviewing with us, we still want to be able to lean into these resources in order to identify where they are so we can put them in their best spot on our team, right? I think it was Jim Collins, Good to Great. Anybody read that book? Who originally I heard say, get them into the right seat on the bus, right? And if they're not in the right seat and you can't find the right seat, then get them off of the bus. Hire the right people, train them the right way. And so in that process, there's two books that I've used recently over time. The very first Don Clifton Gallup book that I looked into was first Break All the Rules, and then I went through Strengths-Based Leadership. And then recently I read Patrick Lencioni's 6 Types of Working Genius. I'm going to touch on each of those today. If you got the ability to do some screenshots, great. Otherwise, I'm sure you can go to their websites and learn some more information. I've taken both of these assessments. We'll show you some screenshots of the assessments. Now, these assessments do cost some money. The Strengths-Based Leadership one, if you buy the books or any of their books, it gives you a discount on the assessment. And the 6 Types of Working Genius, it's $25 a person if you want to have other people in your team take it. There is a strengths-based assessment very similar to the Gallup one, which is called the High Five test, HIGH, number 5. And that High Five test comes off very similar. The first part is free, but to dig deeper and to figure out how everybody meshes together does cost some money. But they promise that finding out your 5 strengths is no cost. So if you want to look at either of those for finding your 5 strengths, there's some good ones to check out. So from a Gallup perspective, just to run you through, it's going to give you your top 5 strengths. It's going to let you know how it is that you work inside of a team. You've got your maximizers, you've got your individualization, strategic, relator, self-assurance. And it's going to show you inside of those colors how it is that they work together and what kind of pool they fit into. Are you executing, a relationship builder, influencing, or strategic thinking? And then again, as you start to pull people on your team together into this assessment, it'll show you how they work together and how it is that you can set your team up in such a way to be successful. In Patrick Lencioni's 6 Types of Working Genius, this one I think is pretty wild. Anybody that's ever read a Patrick Lencioni book knows that he writes these books in very simple parable style stories. So this is a story of him building his business and how they realized at some point inside of their business that everybody on their team had their own strengths and their own weaknesses. And when they worked outside of their genius, they got tired. So like Patrick was really, really good at telling people what to do and helping people to overcome their hump in order to get there, but it made him exhausted. He loved to be the visionary. He was really big on wonder and preferred to stay in wonder and invention, and pulling people together and telling them what to do made him exhausted. So people wondered why he was starting to get grumpy, and because it was as the business grew, he was out there helping people fix problems more often than he was having a chance to be the visionary, and that made him tired. So a quick little piece here on what each of those geniuses mean. We're not really going to spend a bunch of time going into that. I just wanted to introduce this to you. But we do have the genius of wonder, which is that pondering, right? The genius of invention, which is creating, who comes up with the ideas, likes to go out and be a part of a new process. Discernment, so who's intuitive, who can like instinctively see how all the people in the team are going to fit together. Galvanizing pulls those people together in a teamwork style way. Who gets them working and who pulls it through to the end. By the way, I'm not a pull through to the end guy. That'll show here, right? I don't always have the tenacity. That's why I hired a coach, right? I sometimes need somebody to kick my butt in order to make sure that something that I said I was going to start on gets finished. There's a lot of times I'll start on something and then I get 60% of the way through it and I get a little bored. And I want to hand that off to somebody else to take it through the finish line. Well, if I have the right people working for me, I can do that, right? I would need to find somebody that has the working genius of tenacity to be on my team, to take something, a project of mine, an idea of mine, all the way through the finish line. I like to do the high level stuff, and then all the little details somebody else can fill in. It doesn't matter as much to me. And so as long as we take the idea and get running with it, that really works really well. So this is a great one. If you want to understand your working genius, again, $25, Patrick Lencioni's. This one is really wild, in my opinion, because again, if you could get everybody on your team to take this, you'll see how everybody's widget aligns, how the little cogs in the wheel all start to fit together. And it actually starts to line up your team members side of pros versus cons lineup. And you'll see all the teams integrate together inside of their system. It's pretty cool. All right. So here's one that we have for free for you here at Cyberbacker. This is our CBPA, the Cyberbacker Personality Assessment. Who here has had the chance to take one of these personality assessments through Burke assessments? We've got the KPA, the MPA, the CBPA, and I'm sure that they've made assessments for a lot of other companies out there. I've taken every single one of the ones that I've just mentioned. I'm a big fan of this process. And so this is why we're going to spend a little bit more time here. Not only am I a big fan of it, but it's the process that we use here, obviously, at Cyberbacker in order to help identify strengths, weaknesses inside of traits for us to hire Cyberbackers. So if you ever work to hire a Cyberbacker, you're going to see this assessment come out. The very first time I took this assessment was probably, 2024? So 8 years ago, 7 years ago. And then afterwards, it's the only assessment I've ever used to hire anybody personally since then. And there's a big reason why. The biggest reason why is because, in my opinion, it turns an interview where I'm asking questions or I'm telling them about my company, and it turns it into more of a consultative process where, as I talk to the candidate, they're finding out about as much about themselves as I am, because it shows us initially their job fit and how well they're going to fit to the role that we're hiring for. So if we build out a really good job description and we understand what our weaknesses are and what we want to take off of our plate, or we understand what the weaknesses on the team are, again, remember, right seat on the bus. So it might not even be something that you're doing anymore, but you need to hire an assistant for your admin. Brought on a director of ops, but still need somebody to take the bookkeeping off of their role, because as much as they're really good at systems and processes, they might not be a great bookkeeper. Or somebody to manage the CRM while your person that does outbound calls gets to work and doesn't lose themselves in note taking, right? And tagging and organizing of the CRM. If you know what your people are strong at, then you can hire to their weakness. You can assign roles based on strengths and weaknesses for your team. So identify what jobs they are fit for based on the tasks that you've outlined. And from there, boom, have an opportunity to review all of their traits inside of the interview process. If you've already hired them, you can review all the traits with them now and figure out whether or not you've got the right seat on the bus. We had some coaching clients up in New York that were running an HVAC company. They had all the people that they thought they needed to be successful. And inside of that, what they realized was just weren't being successful. So we had them all go through and take the personality assessment, and we realized that the biggest reason was that as the company had grown, each of them just took on tasks that they needed to assign. And they're like, well, my plate's too full, you take, plate's too full, you take that, right? So as they grew, people just added tasks onto their plate. The tasks weren't broken up based on job responsibilities, and they definitely weren't broken up based off of their strength assessments. And so once they understood their strengths and weaknesses, and once they took these personality traits and tests and assessments, they were able to put themselves into the right seat on the bus. They reestablished all the duties on their job description. And from there, boom, all of a sudden, they literally the volume in their business the next year. Results that we could have anticipated. We're already doing pretty successfully, but just having the right people focused on the right things, the things that brought them energy, really brought them a lot of extra business. They thought they were about to go through downsize, and they turned around and actually started to hire more people for their team. And that's actually a big part of what I work with them on, was this, the roles, identifying the responsibilities of those new team members, the SOPs, the training practices, in order to bring them in, focus on their new strengths, and get them hired and trained and working very effectively inside of that part of their business. So inside of the CBPA, we've got this descriptive review, which breaks down how they work well together. It puts all of these traits together and lets you realize how they're going to work with you and on your team. And then again, it literally gives you your interview guide and your packet to go through every single one of those traits and ask them questions to dig in and figure out how that person fits on your team based off of the traits that they offer. So If you want a copy of the CVPA, let me know. If you want to take this assessment yourself, let me know. We are happy to get this out there for you and allow you to take it. I literally, the first time I took it, I had my wife take it. Sometimes I push my wife and pressure my wife into personal development things that she doesn't necessarily want to get into. Most recent one being, by the way, is every night the past couple of weeks, I've listed out 3 wins that I've had for the day. And then I write down 3 things that I want to do, be successful at tomorrow. So, different approach to of gratitude, right? For the things that we've accomplished today, also what I want to be successful at tomorrow. So that fits a little bit into the 80-20 rule, fits a little bit into as far as daily action, step, and intention. Lets me focus on, in my brain while I sleep, what's going to get fixed tomorrow. And so I make my wife do it with me. Happy to let your wife take this too, or your husband or your significant other, because through these paragraphs together, you might not believe what you're reading about yourself, but when your significant other reads it, they'll laugh at how exact it is. So keep that in mind. It's pretty fun. All right. So when we get them into the right seats on the bus, we figure out how to go somewhere great. So the very first step, though, y'all, is you need to label the seats. Okay? Takes it back to the strengths and the weaknesses that you've identified and the tasks that you need to take off your plate. The tasks you need to take off your team's plates in order to stay inside of your strength zone. Focus in on your strength zone. So, there's a time, a chance, come off mute, said a lot, right? We went through a lot here, partially because we only had 2-3 people on the call and didn't want to lean on y'all to provide all the content here. 30 people registered, by the way. So 90-degree weather here in Maryland and a beautiful day might have affected the attendance. Got graduations and proms all coming up. I get it. No offense. We'll have the video for everybody else to take it and go back and take a peek at it. But for you, what have you taken away from this? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What tasks do you need off your plate? What questions do you have? Because once we label the seats, we really want to get the right people to ride in them. You might have the right people working for you already, and we just need to move some things around to get it straightened out. So what obstacle are you facing? How can I help? Who here has used any of these assessments already? The Gallup StrengthsFinder, who's read 6 Working Geniuses? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes. I actually had the benefit of taking both of those, but it's been at least 5 years. So this was very refreshing because I didn't know that we were going to be touching upon those today, but it helps me know to go back and look at those. And also a lot of my partners within the business to have them take them. A lot of my referrals as a financial advisor comes from the retail banking branches here. And off top, some of my partners are very analytical and they're great with follow-up. Others, are more visionary. And, I can think about now sometimes having to do all those things. When you mentioned exhausted, I could relate. It's one of those days. I have a big thing of ice water here, just trying to get through the day and stay refreshed. So taking this again will be key, because I even remember taking it 5 years ago and looking at the results from 2 years prior, and I was in a slightly different role then, and I saw a difference in the results, namely with the StrengthsFinder, just slight difference, but a difference in the result. So I've been in this role now 5 years. So to see how I'll answer those questions now that I have a lot more on my plate, responsibility wise, many more goals, and then much more diverse partners at this time. And some of them we're working really well together and getting things accomplished, and some not so much. So I really appreciate this, and that's my takeaway.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Yeah, that's a great point, because like Gallup's Finder, the free or the less expensive version, depending on which you the book or not, it's free if you bought the book, and if you haven't, then it's $25 or something. The one version gives you 5 strengths, and then the more expensive, like the deep version, gives you like strengths, or 34, I think it is. But your point, those will shift, right? And part of that is because personality isn't permanent. There's a part of our personality that if we want to focus on it, like your MIQ, right? If we want to focus on listening to others and coming from curiosity, I have a client right now that's exactly what we're focused on. He realizes that inside of his business, he does not listen to others very well. So literally what we do every single week is spend time on making sure that he is being more curious about the needs of his clients and his coworkers, and how to come from curiosity inside of those situations, seeking first to understand. And I guarantee you that if we jump back to 3 years ago to today, I already have seen the change in his core values from it, and know that he's had changes in his marriage coming from curiosity. As I became a coach, I developed better relationships with my kids. I asked questions instead of just demanding things, right? So 100% Kay, love that you said that. We did not bring that up here, and that some of these core pieces, some of these traits can change based on what roles you take on and how you choose to utilize those inside of the role. You can make them stronger. Your strengths can become stronger. It's a lot easier to take a strength and make it stronger than it is to take a weakness and bring it up to your strength level, right? Which is one of the reasons we give the weaknesses away and we stay focused on our priorities, for sure. Good. Anyone else? Got one more thing to give away to y'all before you leave. Did want to bring that up. And so this is just a piece that we've introduced recently on our team, maryland.com/take5. Team's been using this for a couple of years and been using this for almost 30 years. I finally decided to put it into an ebook to let other people use it, because I had a lot of clients that kept coming to me and just saying, hey, Jeff, like, you have these conversations weekly. And this is how I have these conversations weekly. The questions in this I use with my clients for coaching. I recommend to our virtual assistant clients, and I use it inside of my own businesses as I talk to my team each week. And that's what this goes through. So if you need a system to help hold your people accountable, just click the link, download the ebook. I mean, single one of you, if you're here, you're already on our email list. So don't be afraid to put your email in. We already email you. So it's going to email you the PDF, which is why we asked for the email address. All right. So anybody else want to share? No? Okay. The big question for you then is, when will you start? So when will you take the time, make a statement to yourself, put it on your calendar, right? You want to identify the time that you will sit down and put together and look at your team and figure out whether or not you've got your team strength or weakness based, working on their strengths. Who's got weakness at the moment that you have an opportunity to expand, let go those weaknesses and give them to somebody else. And in the meantime, feel free to join us for our next call. Obviously, if you want, that needs to hire a cyberbacker, reach out to us. You can scan here for the business evaluation. Otherwise, show up to our next month's mastermind, Recharge and Unwind. Just learning to manage your time as you go into a vacation in order to make sure that you're still hitting the goal. Today recording, Kay, I'm going to put on YouTube by the weekend, so we can get you that link. As far as the materials go, are you asking for the CBPA? Would you like us to send you that assessment?
Yes, please, and thank you.
All right, we can do that. Shar will take care of that. Well, actually, Irene will take care of that, but Shar will let Irene know to take care of that. So, Kay, reach out to me if you haven't seen it by the end of the day, all right?
Will do, and thank you for today's content. It's greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. Good to see you again. Thank you. Have a great weekend.